How's it going, everybody? This is Rob Novakast back with another video, or at least another review. And with this one, I'm kind of continuing this whole Fear Street fix, or continuing with this series, talking about the Fear Street movies with part 2. Now, first off, I need to make a quick apology with my last review, which was Fear Street part 1. If it seems like I'm out of it in that video, I do apologize. By the around the time I was recording it, it was like really late at night. I saw the movie. I wasn't thinking about doing a review on that regardless. Or if anything, like my first initial thought was not doing a review on it. But after I watched it, I was kind of curious about it, and I had some thoughts, and I decided to try to make the review. But realizing that by the time I was recording it, it was really, really freaking late. So, to that, I do apologize if it seems like I'm really out of it from the last review, but trying to record this a little bit earlier than how I recorded that one, so why don't we go ahead and talk about it. Fear Street, Part 2, 1978. Released, obviously, in 2021, directed by Lee Janik, written by Zach Okelskiewicz. Hopefully I said that name correctly. I doubt I did. Lee Janik and Phil Grazade. And this is based on the books from R.L. Stine. So, but just a basic kind of premise, because so far it seems like the story itself is intriguing, to say the least. It follows shortly. This movie follows shortly after the first movie, where we have the character who plays, I guess, C. Burnham, talking to Dina and Josh, and giving her story about how she survived the Sarah Fire. I think that was the name, and discusses how in the year 1978 she was at the camp where the crazy killer went and killed everybody. Now, this something I don't think I kind of addressed is there is a lot. I mean, one of the things, especially when it comes to this film and the other film, is there is a lot of references to stuff that was around in let's say the early 90s and now the early 70s, because we get a lot of great music that I think was released around that time. One of my favorites that kept popping up was "Carry On My Wayward Son" from Kansas. If anything, like when that song came up, it was like just a big form of nostalgia for me, as well as songs like "Don't Fear the Reaper," which has been used in a variety of different movies, games, and a variety of other things. It's so great. And so nostalgia-wise, especially with music, it's really good. And including with some of the score, it when it needs to ramp up, it ramps up. I think if anything, the stronger points when it comes to the score has to be when the killing begins with the current murderer / serial killer Tommy Slater pops up, or becomes the killer he's supposed to be. But other than that, I think if one of the gripes that I have to make for this is, and especially for like the first one, is how over the top the hatred is between people from Sunnyside and Shadyville. I can't remember the two towns. It's so stupid. No, it's Shadyside and Sunny I think it was Sunnyside and Shade. I can't remember the freaking town names. It's so stupid, but at the same time, it's like, it's, when it comes down to the whole thing, it's so weird. Especially with just this irrational hatred towards each other. It's dumb. And at first I was thinking it was just, I mean, originally before they start talking about the whole town rivalry thing, I started thinking, because we have one kid who plays Ziggy, or Ziggy Burma, who is basically bullied by a bunch of kids. I immediately assumed that it was just kids being bullies and being little shitheads, but no, turns out it's because of, the town bullshit. And for the story itself, it shows, like, this is where, I mean, the location for, like, the mall, location for the camp that they're at, everything resides or originates from this one location, especially with everything that's going on with Shadyside, and that being where the witch possibly was murdered, which is insane, to say the least. But things get worse and worse as time progresses. Ziggy is continuously being bullied and harassed. When they try to go to the nurse, who was the mother of one of the serial killers, which was Ruby Lane. She ends up trying to attack Tommy Slater, who is before he becomes the serial killer. Pretty much telling her that it's better off this way. And first, everybody's wondering what she means by that, but we find out that apparently, not only did she have a book with notes about the witch, as well as something called the Witch's Mark, but it turns out by some of the campers, or some of the camp counselors, one of them being Ziggy's sister, they all go and uncover a secret shrine, and on a stone reads all the names of the previous serial killers, as well as Tommy Slater, who immediately, when he goes down there, proceeds to bury an axe into a dude's head. Which, I gotta say, some of the freaking gore in this is grotesque and awesome, and I love it. Though, it's terrible with what happens to some of the people, because, let's face it, you have a serial killer, and he's in a camp full of kids. So, at least with, like, certain point, I will say, at least for the kids, and this is something I noticed for the movie, and I could be wrong, because this is something I just noticed. When it comes down to the young kids, they don't show it. It's like not on camera when you see Tommy Slater proceeding to murder a bunch of kids. But when it comes, like, to the older teens or adults, that's when you see all the gore, the murder and so on. There's actually one scene where literally you have this one kid who's left alone in a little shack after, again, because I guess the teams or the towns that are visiting this camp are playing a game of capture the flag, and the kid's left alone after the opposing team is able to escape. Tommy Slater shows up and is basically rushing towards this kid. We don't see him being killed. All we see is what we see in our, or at least in our peripheral, where you see Tommy in the doorway basically swinging the axe, and we're not seeing the kid at all. So to some extent, it's interesting that they did that, but then thinking about it too, you don't want to see a bunch of kids being brutally murdered. I don't think that would be very good with the censors. But anyways, continuing further, things are starting to get crazy, and they uncover a possible way to defeat the witch, which was, finding her hand as well as reuniting it with her body. And to a certain degree, they find the hand, or at least one of the counselors who was with Ziggy's sister, Cindy. And she ends up getting killed, and throughout it, after a mass majority of the counselors and the kids that were left, or at least left alive, they leave on a bus. Ziggy and Cindy proceed to try to reunite the hand with the body, thinking that it was under a tree or the witching tree or whatever it's called, but it turns out the body's not there. Which, to some extent, since we've seen the first movie, we know where the body's at, where it's ways away from where the tree was placed. So what they end up doing is trying to run away, because at this point, Ziggy, after they grabbed the hand, she had a nosebleed, and some of her blood dripped onto the hand, and therefore she saw the witch, and in turn ends up having to be, unfortunately, tracked down by the other killers. So what they end up doing is trying to fend for themselves, but Ziggy ends up getting captured and basically stabbed to death, and Cindy repeatedly gets a freaking axe buried into her chest, and at that moment both of them die, at least for a short bit, because a young Will Good, or was it Mayor Good, ends up going and resurrecting Ziggy, who we find out that C. Burnham, who our characters meet in present, is actually Ziggy, not Cindy. And this entire time she has been kept alive due to a possible name change, which to me it doesn't make any sense, considering when it comes down to what happened with Sam, regardless of the whole name change thing, she basically was, turned evil with everything that was going on. So it makes no sense. This whole, oh, you changed your name, so you've been safe this entire... I don't get that whole rule. Some things were just... It's weird. Some of these things are weird. If I were to give, I think if the one draw I have about this movie is more so just the lore that's been set up. One thing I can't stand is a few of the characters. There were quite a few characters that I honestly, it's a slasher film, so when I see some of these characters, I was like, oh, you're dead. I look at every single one of these characters, I'm like, you're dead. No doubt about it. Almost every single one of you are dead. So I feel nothing for these characters, unfortunately. Then we have situations like the just over-exaggerated hatred towards both the towns. It gets, to me, it just becomes really, really fucking stupid. And I just kind of cringe at it at this point. The music itself that they're given to us, the score, especially when it gets closer to the end, is really good. The music that is the iconic nostalgic rock that we get to hear, is really good, and I like some of the choices they made. So, and by the way, going further, before I forget, because the movie ends with a really cool note, kind of setting up for part 3, where we have Dina and Josh telling C. Burna, or Ziggy Burna, that they found the body. So they grab the hand, and Dina by herself goes and reunites the hand with the body. And we have this, I guess she flashed back, or time travel things. I don't know what it is, but it shows Dina in place of Sarah Fair, the witch. So, begs the question, what's going to happen now? I don't know. I'm hoping it's a little bit better than the last couple of movies. Because again, when it comes down to certain aspects, I love some of the ideas, especially with some of the nostalgic points to the music. Half the characters, I mean, at this point, I don't care for, because let's face it, this one and the last one were slasher films, so I look at these characters, especially with the character traits, I'm like, okay, yeah, you guys are dead. More than likely. And above all, it's meh to me. I do like the lore, but at the same time, everything else is just meh. And I hate to be a dick, but that's just the way I feel about it. And looking at IMDb, they gave this film a 6.8 out of 10, which I think they did the same thing for part 1, which is odd. So, I hate to continue being a dick, but I don't agree with that rating. So, unfortunately, Fair Street Part 2 from me receives a 3. Again, I love the lore, and I love some of the nostalgic points, but just everything else, as well as actually, to add the story, but some of the other things, like the characters, just the stupid conflict, it just is so fucking obnoxious. But regardless, 3 out of 10 for me. I'm sorry for those who might be fans of this movie, but I'm not a fan of this. It wasn't good. All right. So with that was my final thoughts of Fear Street Part 2, 1978. What are your thoughts? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. For now, though, I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Truly appreciate it. If you guys can, please leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, all the good stuff. If you guys want to follow us on social media, links are in the description down below, as well as check out our daily content and the weekly podcast. With that being said, this is Rob Novakast signing off. Have a good one. Take care, and peace.